What's up, Wildcats? This is Mr. Walker coming at you from the main office. Today we're going to read Chapter 7 of a series of unfortunate events. Today we gave out 208 total Chromebooks to our 6th through 8th graders. We thank the parents for coming. We thank our IT people, Bill and Angel, and Mr. Quelly helped out, and Ms. Barnhill helped out, so we thank everybody for that. And we had a lot of people kind of waiting online, so we thank the Hailden Police for coming and just kind of helping keep people, 6 feet apart so we can get people in and out. But we appreciate that. But now, Chapter 7, I'm rocking out my House of Poe shirt. That's appropriate because we have a character named Mr. Poe. He has 2 sons named Edgar and Allan, and the House of Poe is based on the American writer Edgar Allan Poe. And Edgar Allan Poe is an American writer, and so is Mr. Lemony Snicket. So let's get to Chapter 7. Real quick, we know that the last chapter ended with Count Olaf coming up with a plan. He wants Violet in particular to be part of this play he's performing. He's only performing it one night. And she only has one role, and that's to play the bride, and she only has one line, it's to say, I do. So in this play, he wants to get married to Violet, and Justice Strauss, who's an actual judge, has volunteered to play the part of the judge who officiates this play marriage. Also interesting, the name of the author of this play is Al Funkoot. So I think that's called an anagram or something like that, but I think if you play with the words a little bit, you might see who the real author of this play is that they're performing. The play within the play, little Hamlet action. So here we go, Chapter 7. There are many, many types of books in this world. We got 17 pages, so we got some work to do. Which makes good sense because there are many, many types of people, and everybody wants to read something different. For instance, people who hate stories in which terrible things happen to small children should put this book down immediately. But one type of book that practically no one likes to read about is a book about law. Books about law are notorious for being dull and boring and difficult to read. This is one reason many lawyers make heaps of money. The money is an incentive. The word incentive here means an offered reward to persuade you from doing something you don't want to do. To read long, bold, difficult books is often something we don't want to do. The Boulder children had a slightly different incentive for reading these books, of course. Their incentive was not heaps of money, but preventing Count Olaf from doing something horrible to them in order to get to the heaps of money. But even with this incentive, getting through the law books in Justice Strauss's private library was a very, very hard task. Goodness, Justice Strauss said, when she came into the library and saw they were reading. She had let them in the house, but immediately went into the backyard to do her gardening, leaving the Bolaire orphans alone in the glorious library. I thought you were interested in mechanical engineering, animals of North America, and teeth. Are you sure you really want to read these enormous law books? I don't even like reading them, and I work in law. Yes, said Violet. I find them quite interesting, Justice Strauss. So do I, Klaus said. Violet and I are considering a career in law, so we're fascinated by these books. Well, Justice Strauss said, Sonny can't possibly be interested. Maybe she'd like to come help me with gardening. Weep, Sonny shrieked, which meant, I'd much prefer gardening to sitting around watching my siblings struggle through logbooks. Just make sure she doesn't eat any dirt, Klaus said, bringing Sonny over to the judge. Of course, Justice Strauss said. We wouldn't want her to be sick for the big performance. Klaus and Violet exchanged a look. Violet and Klaus exchanged a look. Are you excited about the play? Violet asked hesitatingly. Justice Strauss's face lit up. Oh, yes, she said. I've always wanted to perform on stage ever since I was a little girl. And now Count Olaf has given me the opportunity to live my lifelong dream. Aren't you thrilled to be part of the theater? I guess so, Violet said. Of course you are, Justice Strauss said, stars in her eyes and sunny in her hands. She left the library, and Klaus and Violet looked at each other and sighed. She's stage-struck, Klaus said. She won't believe that Count Olaf is up to something, no matter what. She wouldn't help us anyway, Violet pointed out. She's a judge, and she'd probably start babbling about loco parentis, just like Mr. Poe. That's why we got to find a legal reason to stop this performance. Have you found anything in your book yet? Nothing helpful, Violet said, glancing down at the scrap of paper which she'd been taking notes. 50 years ago, there was a woman who left an enormous sum of money to her pet weasel and none to her 3 sons. The 3 sons tried to prove that the woman was insane so the money would go to them. But what happened, Klaus said. I think the weasel died, Violet replied, but I'm not sure. I have to look up some more of these words. I don't think that's really going to help us anyway, Klaus said. Maybe Count Olaf is trying to prove that we're insane, so maybe he'd get the money, Violet said. But why would making us into the marvelous marriage prove that we were insane, Klaus said. I don't know, Violet admitted. I'm stuck. Have you found anything? Around the time of your weasel lady, Klaus said, flipping through the enormous book he'd been reading, a group of actors put on a production of Shakespeare's Macbeth, and none of them wore any clothing. Violet blushed. You mean they were all naked on stage? Only briefly, Klaus said. The police came and shut down the production. I don't think it's very helpful either. It was just an interesting thing I read about here. Violet sighed. Maybe Count Olaf isn't up to anything. I'm not interested in performing in his play, but perhaps we're all working up to about nothing. Maybe Count Olaf really is just trying to welcome us into the family. How can you say that, Klaus said. He struck me in the face. But there's no way he can get hold of our money just by putting us in a play. My eyes are tired from reading these books, Klaus, and they aren't helping us. I'm going to go outside and help out Judge Strauss in the garden. Klaus watched his sister leave the library and felt a wave of hopelessness wash over him. The day of the performance was not far off, and he hadn't even figured out what Count Olaf was up to, let alone how to stop him. All his life, Klaus had believed that if he read enough books, you could solve any problem. But now he was not so sure. You there, a voice coming through the doorway startled Klaus out of his thoughts. Count Olaf sent me to look for you. You're to return to his house immediately. Klaus turned and saw one of the members of Count Olaf's theater troupe, the one with the hooks for hands, standing in the doorway. What are you doing in this musty old room anyway? He asked in his croak of a voice, walking over to where Klaus was sitting. Narrowing his beady eyes, he read the title of one of the books. Inheritance Law and Its Implications, he said sharply. Why are you reading that? Well, why do you think I'm reading it, Klaus said. I'll tell you what I think. The man put one of his terrible hooks on Klaus's shoulder. I think you should never be allowed inside this library again, at least until Friday. We don't want a little boy getting any big ideas. Now, where's that sister and that hideous baby? They're in the garden, Klaus said, shrugging off the hook of a shoulder. Why don't you go get them? The man leaned over until his face was just inches from Klaus, so the man's features flickered into a blur. Listen to me very carefully, little boy, he said, breathing out a foul steam of every word. The only reason Count Olaf hasn't torn you limb from limb is that he hasn't got hold of your money yet. He allows you to live while he works out his plans. But ask yourself this, you little bookworm. What reason will he have to keep you alive once he has your money? What's going to happen to you then? Klaus felt an icy chill go through him as the horrible man spoke. He had never been so terrified in all his life. He found that his arms and his legs were shaking uncontrollably, as if he were having some sort of fit. His mouth was starting to make strange sounds like Sonny always did. As he struggled to find something to say, Klaus heard himself choke, When the time comes, the hook-handed man said smoothly, ignoring Klaus's noises, I believe Count Olaf might just leave you to me. So if I were you, I'd start acting a little bit nicer. The man stood up again and put both his hooks in front of Klaus's face, letting the light from the reading lamps reflect off the wicked-looking devices. Now, if you will excuse me, I have to fetch your poor orphan siblings. Klaus felt his body go limp as the hook-handed man left the room, and he wanted to sit there for a moment and catch his breath, but his mind wouldn't let him. This was his last moment in the library, and perhaps his last opportunity to foil Count Olaf's plan. But what to do? Hearing the faint sounds of the hook-handed man talking to Justice Strauss in the garden, Klaus looked frantically around the library for something that could be helpful. Where am I? Just then, he heard the man's footsteps leading back his way. Klaus spied one book and quickly grabbed it. He tucked it under his shirt and put the book inside, hastily retucking it just as the hook-handed man re-entered the library, escorting Violet and carrying Sonny, who was trying, without success, to bite the man's hooks. "I'm ready to go," Klaus said quickly, and he walked out the door before the man could get a good look at him. He walked quickly ahead of his siblings, hoping that nobody would notice the book-shaped lump in his shirt. Maybe, just maybe, the book Klaus was smuggling could save their lives. Oh, so that's the end of our chapter. Another good chapter. Very soon, I'm hoping to have the next chapter. But we're 79 pages in, and we only have a total of 142, so we're more than halfway done. Have a good weekend, Wildcats. See you later.